she's from the brain.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It is the 9th, can you believe it? The 9th Alpha Beta Talk brought to you by Alpha Collective. For those of you that are new, Alpha Collective is a professional organization focused on Web3, ancillary and intersecting focus areas like AI, trust, authentication, community ownership, and whatever comes next. Our vision is to usher in the era of community capitalism. Our mission is to help onboard the next billion wallets via the next billion brand dollars. In season 1, we will roll out IRL events, monthly vertical masterminds, weekday virtual coffees in our collective cafe, and our flagship product, 52 Alpha Talks delivered by 52 Alpha Talk speakers, 26 male and 26 female, or those who identify as such. But to get the ball rolling, we're proud to share 13 additional rock stars who will deliver 13 Alpha Beta Talks over the next 15 weeks. They're free as part of a preview period, but after Labor Day, they will be for members only. You can purchase your membership pass at alphacollective.xyz via this thing called a credit card, or while stocks last via crypto at mint.alphacollective.xyz. And before I bring on our next speaker, here is a small clip and highlight from our 8th talk delivered by Jess Clifton. There are many more clips from her, but I just wanted you to watch this one.
Most practical and interesting use of AI for me as a marketer, talking to these big Fortune 500 clients every day, is production. So we can really elevate the quality and amplify the scale of creative content through something we call synthetic production. And what that is a setup and an infrastructure that enables us to start with a couple of different types of shoots like you would traditionally, and then plugging it into a tool that helps us elevate and accelerate multiple variations. And that ultimately gives us kind of the opportunity, rather than having a human develop 100 different designs and articulations of 5 to 6 variations of imagery or specific ads. The algorithms can do it, and that saves us a lot of time and energy and saves clients a lot of money. And then what we can do is put that into what I was talking about earlier, which is the dynamic creative optimization, DCO, and help us to kind of understand, of these variations, what's going to create the most personalized, responsive, and conversational experience with our customers. And using kind of back-end AI media modeling and media mix modeling, we can continue to serve variations of those ads to drive the greatest impact of advertising, which is really exciting. We're doing this right now for many clients, and the roster keeps growing every day. I can't even keep up with it, but I think it's really worked out very well for some of our bigger clients who were really eager to pilot it from the beginning. And we're continuing to kind of elevate that synthetic production and helping them really achieve significant ROI with lower cost.
Why I really loved that clip was because Jess was talking about CRM and retention, and it actually seems that it's a very interesting intersection between AI and Web3. That Web3 is going to be able to deliver intimacy and loyalty, and really kind of amplify the power of retention, almost as the new acquisition. And it is through this partnership between AI and Web3 that we're going to be able to be so much more customized and personalized and intimate with our loyalist, with our raving fan. But to what end? Well, that perhaps might be shared ownership, shared rewards, the ability through fractional ownership to actually give back to our loyalists, to our customers, to people that have been with us for so long. So I'll kind of leave that with you. But now it is time to invite in our ninth Alpha Beta Talk speaker. I love his simple, humble bio that says, I'm Web3's errant knight. I think more like a Jedi Knight, helping people see beyond the buzzwords and making our mission tangible through the space. So please join me in welcoming k41r0n himself, Alejandro Arango, all the way from an undiagnosed and undisclosed bunker somewhere in the EU. Should we just leave it at that?
Happy to leave it at that. How's it going, Joseph?
I am all the better to see you. Sometimes it's nice to move beyond avatars and PFPs and AI generated versions of our face to actually show our real version. I think actually Midjourney did a pretty good job with you. What do you think?
It was a pretty fab job. Yeah, not gonna lie.
Yeah, you've got this definite this pioneer, this explorer type of look and feel towards you, and
It's the beard, isn't it?
I'm telling you, it came up very strongly. All right, so I am going to load up your presentation, Finding Crypto's Captcha Moment. I've been thinking about this all week in terms of what it actually means. I have an idea of what I think it means, but I decided to just suspend all belief or disbelief, give it to you to take it away, and I will see you when you're done.
That sounds fantastic. So, hey, folks, I've come here to talk to you about something that I decided to call crypto's Captcha Moment. So, essentially, what I mean, let's start by telling you a little bit about myself. So, I'm a full-time DAO contributor. I've been doing it since late 2020. Been around the block, helped a couple of good projects that you probably heard about. And up until recently, yeah, this was my full-time job. I go from project to project, helping them make their mission tangible and addressable. And yeah, doing that job is where I stumble upon this new idea that I've decided to call the Captcha Moment. And essentially, it was born from noticing, hey, what's really happening when you identify your identity as a person doing your Captcha? What you were doing by doing that was training image recognition models. By clicking on the fire hydrants or the bicycles or the dogs or buses, you're helping DALL-E or Midjourney happen. Or most recently, by talking with ChatGPT in your native language, what you're really doing is diversifying the way these AIs work with language. It used to be the case that 90% of AI worked in English, or usually like English and French were the most common. Now, by having a simple interface that allows us to interact with AI in more everyday, you could even call them pedestrian ways, we're helping diversify them and specialize them in ways that no single institution could. So to break it down into its core components, a Captcha Moment is an interaction beat that doesn't take more than 30 seconds of someone's time. Think a like, think a share, think I verify your identity by clicking a single toggle. It isn't part of the core experience. It is not what you came there to do. When you are verifying your identity, you want to download a file, you want to access a website. You're not going there just for the purpose of identifying yourself. But it also serves a clear function besides what it's doing behind the scenes. So, for example, the CAPTCHA, it's a safety measure that the entire internet uses while helping train these image recognition models. ChatGPT, it's useful to everyone at this point. We're all using it for research or content creation or you name it. But behind the scenes, it's helping deepen our understanding of language. So it all comes down to what we've always been doing. Captcha Moments are just aggregate data, finding insights in the massive amount of insights you could find with these basic interactions and then showing them back to people. The difference of any capture moment in cryptos is that it just so happens that this capture moment can be accessed by anyone, anytime, anywhere. So where do we find this capture moment? Like, I thought long and hard about what cryptos aggregate data could be used for in terms of our everyday lives, because this feels very ethereal, very big brained, but the whole point would be for it to help everyday people in their actual problems. So I consider, okay, let's start with the OG case for crypto, financial solutions. Yes, that's a call to action. That's the call to fame that crypto started with. But you don't want to build a basic interaction off the back of accidental millionaires. Like, the crypto world has a fame and they have earned it. I don't think the world is quite ready for what a decentralized currency can achieve. So it sure has its own potential, but I don't think we are going to be riding that vehicle as a capture moment. Well, we could also use identity. Go back to the original captcha. There's, for example, what WorldCoin has been using it for, to identify you and then give you the basic income. But the trouble with that one, and what every naysayer will very quickly point out, is that unless you are extremely careful when you build an identity solution, it turns into a social credit system very quick. So yes, this one is another huge use case that we have in front of us, but doing it as a vehicle to bring crypto mass adoption would just be asking for trouble. So thinking long and hard about all of these possible use cases, that all of them have their own value for their own sake, I landed on the one that I think has the most potential. One that has been a part of us for the longest time, and we've only recently come to terms of harnessing digitally: social media and media in general. With our aggregate likes, with our aggregate comments, with sentiment analysis, all channeled through a public database that is the blockchain. Just look at what happened with Cambridge Analytica. Just look at what happened with all of these gigantic moments that were harnessed by social media, and think what we could make and how we could combat the bad actors if all of this information was available publicly and not siloed within Metas or Twitters, or you name your favorite social media's private database. So yeah, like, I believe we are really onto something here. If we learn to build this simple, like, dedicated moments that tell a cohesive story within blockchain data, and we make it public to anyone who wants to build with them, we could build the financial future we want, where no one can be unbanked. We could build a global database that can be used to compound any kind of application we want. We could even have a global passport that carries your information with you just with a touch of a button, or your eye, or your fingertip, however you may like it. But first, we need to set the foundation through our very core social interactions. And thankfully, there's never been a better moment to do that. The platforms to get this aggregate data already exist. We only need to start tapping into them. For example, here, like, I have exemplified it through Mirror articles because I'm a gigantic fan of the Mirror platform. But just insert your favorite crypto platform, crypto media platform in here, and you will find the useful data that I'm thinking about. Like, I'm not talking about building a new standard here. More so learning to understand that just minting an NFT or collecting it or swapping a token or burning it can tell you a lot of a bigger story than just a financial. So without much further ado, like, yeah, the data is out there, people. Let's start building, and thank you.
All right, I have to tell you, I'm gonna switch to our fireside chat in a moment background. But for the first time, I actually almost want you to go through the presentation again with me. In fact, I can actually do it. I'm going to ask you some specific questions. But before we do that, I want you to attempt to really dumb this down. I want you to imagine that I or someone watching is the chief marketing officer or the chief executive officer of a Procter and Gamble, a Coca-Cola, an American Express. You may want to. So I want you to try and tell your story, almost go through the whole presentation, not in as much detail, but just to tell that narrative, weave that story to someone that almost feels like you might have just been speaking Martian to them. And
Fantastic.
and then I'm going to ask you, and then I'll ask you something else. So let's go back to. I have the ability. I can drive your slides as well, which is kind of cool. So let's see if this makes sense. By the way, it was so interesting because initially when I thought of a Captcha moment, I was thinking almost like a use case, a moment. I thought, without knowing anything more, that we would be talking about something like a kind of a key that unlock, and I think you are right, a key that can unlock everything, not Pandora's box, but the opposite. So if you wouldn't mind, just kind of weave us through this narrative, almost imagining that you're talking to your grandmother, or in this case, the chief marketing officer of Procter and Gamble. No disrespect to Mark Pritchard, but go for it.
So I gave a similar talk to this one, I think a month ago in ETH Barcelona. And the whole experiment there was, hey, you make your own use case. Like the whole point of that was, sure, I may think social media is one of the capture moments, but let's see how you can think of your everyday life in terms of how you can build the simplest possible on-chain transaction that feeds good data to find like patterns. One that was really interesting to me was, imagine if you grabbed a kindergarten and you had all of those 5-year-olds, and every single day you let them pick what they were going to eat at lunch. Of course, most of them, or 99% of them, would say they want the ice cream or the chocolate pudding or the cake. But what happens when one kid in every school says, no, I want to eat the carrot? That kid may look like a huge minority in the school, depending on where they're at. But if you had a way to see and run this experiment in every kindergarten in the world, we would start to see that the kids who are the carrots, they may be up to 5% in another place, or maybe more than half of them, depending on the type of upbringing they have. Or we may end up knowing like, yeah, you know what, 99% of kids want the cake. But the point is, once you stop thinking of data in terms of like, hey, this belongs to my company, or like it belongs to that social media. And for example, Facebook advertising to me is a great example. They know a lot about us, and Amazon does as well on all of these platforms. And they let advertisers tap into that for a fee. They let you, hey, find people who are 1% similar to who you're targeting, or 2%. And just that pocket change of data they could share with us allowed them to sway an election or start revolutions if they wanted.
Okay, so I'm starting to you're starting to drop a couple of crumbs my way, and I think the hint or the clue was when you spoke about the unbanked. There are, let's just say, a lot of injustices or a lot of imbalances. Um, it isn't, and there hasn't been a level playing field in the past. It's been a pay to play, and
Mhm.
the Matthews effect, right? The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And I think what you're saying is, as they say, the blockchain doesn't lie. If you're able to now create a democratized level playing field for data, not based on intent or based on some kind of sample, but based on actual behavior, and provide that to all and sundry, what it does is it creates a level playing field where the best ideas and the best opportunities will bubble up to the forefront.
Absolutely. And it allows a single individual to have a much, much bigger impact. Like, yeah, like the whole point of the capture moment isn't only in opening up the data, because the blockchain already enables that. Like, you could do it. But all of the data that's being contained in there is financial. It's towards tokens, towards speculation, towards this whole thing that crypto carries as baggage around the world. What the capture moment does is, how do we start measuring what kind of lunch kids want with on-chain transactions? Or how do we measure if the $5 you're sending over, are you purchasing an ice cream for your child, or sending money over to your grandma? Like, understanding not only the movement of money, but understand, like, building the moments where finding the patterns, finding the how the whole world would behave in such a situation would allow us to, yeah, iterate better, have better ideas, have better solutions.
I like that also because, we've always said in business, follow the money. But it's not always been obvious or easy to follow the money. In this case, as you say, the movement of money, the movement of engagement, the movement of actual behavior underpinned by some kind of monetary transaction is a lot more powerful than guesswork or sample sizes. It's almost like an interesting, because I was going to ask you, Alejandro, who's the enemy in this? And I'll just to be specific, to me, enemy doesn't always mean a person or a company. It can be an idea. It could be, it could be mediocrity. But and I don't even mean it literally like like a battle. But I think it's important to push off against the status quo, against the way things always have been done, in favor of a new way or a different way or better way. So, with that said, who's the enemy here?
In terms of this, like, the way I would look at an enemy is the people who want to hoard the value of this information. Like, let's not even call it data, but the people with the know-how and the tools to find these patterns, to understand how to move the world and impact it through data, and decide to keep that to themselves. Because that is the key difference there. Like, sure, there's always going to be a disbalance in terms of how you understand it, how you see the patterns, how you can act upon them. But if you intentionally make it opaque so that no one else can have the quote unquote advantage you have, I see that as being actively malicious.
I'm letting that sit for a second because I really love this concept of the hoarders, right? The hoarders, people that are willfully aggregating, accumulating, and then selectively choosing what to release, what to share, what to cite, and what not to. And the only thing I wonder, and this is going in a very, very interesting direction, which I absolutely love, is the fact that there's also a lot of mystification. There's a lot of confusion. There's still a lot of smoke and mirrors in the space at the moment, where the people that know, they say when you know, but the people that know are also manipulating or manipulators as well. How do we encounter the enemy within, which is, within the degen space, within the first mover space, in terms of being able to use this magic wand, this gift, this trail of breadcrumbs for their own financial gain? I'm asking you very tough questions.
That is a fantastic one. I'm gonna need you to, like, break it down into like a simpler version of it.
Well, the simplest version of it is, we often say the blockchain doesn't lie. But I'll make it even simpler. When I was 22, 23, I worked for a fast food chicken company in South Africa. And one of the things that I did, one of my job one of my roles was to do all the analytics and all the reporting on promotions and engagement and foot traffic. We always used to look at ticket average and feet through the door and menu mix and etc. And I made myself little kind of parody business cards, and I said, Joseph Jaffe, head of analytics. And then there was a quote that said, "The data never lies unless I wanted to." So, for example, if there was one person watching today, and next week there were two people watching, I could say we've had 100% increase in viewership, right, off a small base. So I was being a little cynical and a little snarky by being able to say, "Hey, I was telling the truth. We doubled our viewership." What I didn't say was that we only had one viewer. And so I think that I've seen a lot of wallet manipulation and a lot of movement that takes place between wallets. And we're not, even though we can see what's happening, we're not necessarily sure who is behind the wallet and where the money is moving. So that's what I'm talking about, which is there is first mover advantage, but there's also a lot of short-term gain by potentially through manipulation and through maybe taking the low road. Does that make more
Gaming the
sense?
system. Yes. In that case, let me regale you with a story of my own. So when I still work with Web2 companies, I used to be an email specialist. Like content and email is by far my specialty. And once we launched a campaign to get email signups, and it just so happened that this company had a lot of speculative, like it didn't incentivize it, but it did carry it with it. People weren't speculating about this company. So anything we did, it was botted to hell and back. It was followed by like Sybil accounts, like people making spoof accounts just to interact with us. We made that campaign to get email signups, and we got like 25,000 in one day. And we were like, wow, this is fantastic, incredible. Yeah, like we grew this overnight. And then we noticed that people weren't opening the emails and they weren't clicking the links. And we had like a 99% drop off in terms of everything valuable that email promises. And then we started questioning how many of these are bots. So I did a little trick. I added an empty pixel with a link to the unsubscribe page at the bottom of the email so that no human could interact with it, even accidentally. But a scraping bot that opened that email and clicked every link sequentially to interact with it would be signed out of our database. By the next time we sent an email, more than 10,000 people were removed from our mailing list. What I mean with that story, in terms of your question, is yes, people will game the system. That's always going to happen. But then what I would say is we're not asking the right questions if we're allowing them to game it. How do you ask the questions to make sure to prevent this kind of behavior from happening? If you do it like surface level, it's very easy to game. But if you add those filters that only a human could go through, then you start getting the right answers.
So now we come back to one of the most important things, which is humanity. One of the things I often say is, how do you automate intimacy? How do you scale humanity? And now we literally are talking about Captcha as an ability to see that there is a human being. I mean, look, in Web 2, talk about enemies, right? Web 2, to this day, whether it's X, whether it's any other social media platform, it is just filled with bots, with everything from buying followers to botting followers. And so what it's done is create the picture of reach, popularity, influence. And what that does, in return, is that the real artists, the publishers, the creators, creators on Mirror, for example, get drowned out by the noise from the people that are speaking the loudest, not necessarily with the best message. So I think I don't know. Maybe that's where you're getting to when you talk about this idea of this use case, this capture moment being within social and media, and even social media. So this could be a very, very interesting um, response now, because if you were talking to that General Motors chief marketing officer or Procter and Gamble chief marketing officer, and I know both of them, they've both actually been guests on my show on Joseph Jaffe is Not Famous. They're looking for Super Bowl. They're looking for reach. They're looking for popularity. They're looking for influence. They're looking for all of the above. In order for them to hit their quarterly goals, they need enough of the right people. Are you offering them a solution here from what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Like as a starting ground, the capture moment is just the button that opens the floodgates. Because once you start designing experiences based on that, then what happens? So let's say there's a platform that allows you to make video, another platform that's like X that allows you to share short form content, and another one that's long form content. For example, Mirror, the one I like. What you can do on top of that is you can see how the relationship between the long form content and people sharing it in the short form. Or you can see the video platform and how people cut it up and turn it into articles. And you can see the audiences for all of them. You can see the collections for all of them. You can see the overlap between people who collect on two creators. And all of that, like, this is the important part. All of that is public data. You can see all of that just by going to a block scanner. Nowadays, it's very hard to read, but with this kind of categorization that the Captcha Moment could bring, it becomes as readable as a report. Like, hey, Alejandro got a 90% increase in collectors, but wait, there's more. It just so happens that one of them is, let's say, George R.R. Martin. That's the kind of information you want to get when you're looking for these insights. Like, yeah, not only can I see the number increase, but as I can track George R.R. Martin's wallet, I can see that he's a big fan of Alejandro. He's collected every single one of his pieces.
And where does permission fit into this? Because there's actually two pieces to the puzzle, right? One is this idea of myself as a consumer giving you permission to trade or to connect with me or to use my data. Obviously, if it's public, if it's free is one thing. The other thing is when I own and control my data, you now are not in, you need to get permission from me in a different way, or maybe I'm going to charge you. So where is it all heading at the end of the day? If I own my data, my health data, for example, my engagement data, my viewership data, um, how does that fit into this new vision?
The answer to that is all of the above. Like a friend of mine a couple years ago, and she's a privacy expert. She wrote an entire thesis saying we are sitting ducks the second Meta decides to use on-chain data. And ever since then, the entire conversation about privacy and about monetizing your own data and about NFTs being the new cookie have arisen. And I agree with all of them. The thing is, like as I mentioned, on-chain data nowadays, as it's currently stand, is very hard to find the patterns. It's very hard to find the insights. We need to be proactive and build the experiences. And while building those experiences, what can happen is while you're building your application or your whatever tool you may like, you can add that privacy layer. You can build that application that allows you to monetize. Hey, you want to tap into my health data? Then pay me $10 a month and it's all yours. Or you can never have it if you want. Like, yeah, the solutions to that exist. And similar to the Captcha Moment, it's about the people making Web3 happen and looking at the use cases, thinking of that and implementing it into the applications they develop.
Could we maybe be I'm thinking to myself, like, if I was a chief marketing officer, I would be watching this conversation intently, because it is actually opening up, in this case, a Pandora's box. The difference is, it's it's not us, the consumers, that are on the wrong side of the equation. We are starting to flex our own collective power in terms of where this leads and how this moves forward. So we're talking about insights. We're talking about, I was thinking, I wonder if there is a reverse capture moment. And what I mean by that is now we are, I'll explain to you what I mean. I like that. I see that. You're like, what is that? So I say reverse capture moment in the sense that now we can determine when the brands are coming crawling for our data, saying, you're going to have to kind of pass this test. You're going to have to prove, in our case, prove you're a human. In their case, prove that maybe they're going to serve us better, or they're going to pay us, or they're going to provide some value in return, that they can't just come crawling and spidering and scraping. This is going to need to be an inquiry where we are at least at a minimum going to meet them halfway. That's what I refer to as a reverse capture moment.
That is exciting. I dream of the day that happens, and it is entirely feasible.
Of course.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would dream of that happening.
Well, all it takes is an entrepreneur. All it takes is, is a pioneer. All it takes is a technologist, a coder, a developer, quite frankly, ironically, even using and incorporating some of these AI tools to be able to outbrand the brands. How about that? What happens when we outbrand the brands, or we out-government governments?
That's, yeah, like, here's a little bit of alpha for the alpha talk. My most recent piece, the one I'm still working on, is going to be pretty much about that. Not necessarily about outbranding the brands, but how can you build DAOs as a liminal device? And by that, what I mean is, why don't you dream of your cell phone? Why do you dream of the people you talk with, but you never dream of your cell phone or your laptop? Because the device itself doesn't matter. What matters is what's behind it. The YouTube video you're watching, the friend you're talking to, the conference you're giving. So yeah, I think I may have a couple more insights to share with you after that article's done.
Well, I'm seeing Alina Vagoda just said saw this tweet from Austin that brings in mind the reverse capture moment. So it looks like this isn't as much pie in the sky. I'm gonna have to check out Austin Roby's tweet as well. Maybe I'll do that actually while you're talking. So, what's the message to? Actually, I'll take a step back. How important is it to be able to reach out to the Fortune 500, the Global 2000, and how important is it to get the next $1 billion from them in order to help mainstream, clean up Times Square, chase out the scammers and the spammers, grow the space, this Web3 space, this crypto space? Use crypto as it was intended to be used to, as you say, to engage the unbanked. Alexandra Damska was on the show and blew my mind when she actually started talking about the fact that, if you are a person of color, if you are a person that doesn't look like, quite frankly, an aging white male like this guy, it's actually not that easy to get capital, to start a business, to be able to fund your entrepreneurial ventures. And that alone should be a moment to embrace with respect to crypto, with respect to this emerging world. So A, how important is it to be able to actually bring in the brand's $1 billion? And then what do you tell them? What's your pitch to them, Alejandro, in terms of not only why they should be investing in this space, but what they should be doing?
Okay, so first prong of that answer is with the S&P 500 companies. It's very interesting, and that's something I've noticed, is that the top 10 of them are the data leaders of the world. They are the people who know how to use the data. The bottom 490 like the further you get from the top 10, the less they know how to use it. And the more traditionally they seem to be oriented. I would go to those. And first, as how we help the unbanked, I would frame it as, hey, do you like ChatGPT? Do you want to build that but for your business? Here's how you make it happen. We go to, thinking of any company, let's go to Ben and Jerry's and look at all their repertoire of ice creams and their retail locations. And I don't even know if they have ice cream shops. And we start understanding not only the behavior for the ice cream, but for the entire of their ecosystem, let's call it merch and locations and the whole thing. Once you can understand that, you will uncover what those patterns can unlock. For language, it was ChatGPT, but for ice cream, who knows what it may be? It may be the perfect ice cream that everyone wants to buy. Or if you go to any utensil company, let's say something that makes kitchenware, you can build materials quicker and you can build products that withstand the test of time while needing the correct replacements to make them revenue generating. And yeah, coming back to the average citizen, once you build those huge masses of information, the average citizen can also grab into that. You can say you're starting a publication, you can look at every single issue of the New Yorker, see which articles people liked, and based the way you are presenting yourself through whatever publication you may admire, whatever legendary piece you may like, you can see how much Mick Jagger was paid for X concert to look up to that. Once information becomes transparent, a lot can happen.
And look, I mean, it's scary. It's really, really scary when you realize that the emperor has no clothes. When actually the things we say, our bravado, our pretense, can actually be proven or refuted in terms of whether it's how much money we made. I mean, we're seeing it now with X in terms of people being able to be, people showing and sharing and saying, this is how much money I made. Because also, if you don't disclose it, and you say one thing and it ends up being another thing, you can be taken to task. So even though that's not necessarily an on-chain event, it's going to be. And I think, this must be scary for the big brands, for the corporate world, because they've traded on buying Super Bowl spots, or I call it stupid bowl spots, or big reach events. But we don't know how many people actually watched. We don't know whether they in fact got return on their investment, how much wastage was built. And when all the wastage is built, I mean, if you're the board, if you're the chairman of the board, if you're the CEO, and you see your chief marketing officer literally flushing millions of dollars down the toilet, they're probably not going to keep their job for very long. And so I see that's almost an inevitability. You can run, but you can't hide. So you may as well get ahead of it now before it comes back to bite you in the butt.
Coming back to the data doesn't lie unless Joseph Jaffe wants it to. Yeah, like that. I feel that's something we all experiment. Like the magical realism of, the world runs on the stories we want to tell, not really on the facts. But at the same time, and I'm sorry for bringing ChatGPT so much into this, but it is the example of the day. The same way we are adapting to it and learning to use that, like, okay, maybe now a lot of things, like operational things, don't require authorship, is the way I would describe it. Like, you don't need someone to write a contract every single time. Then we can learn, like, hey, maybe that CMO could just be a dashboard. And sadly, it could mean that CMO loses their job. But at the same time, who knows? They may find another one that suits them better.
I mean, that was a money shot and a flippin' body blow. The CMO becomes a dashboard. I mean, it's kind of sad but true. And by the way, the flip side of it is I use ChatGPT a lot, and I'm often rebuking and saying, you know what, stop making up shit,
Exactly.
basically. Stop doing that. Like, I see you. And so that capture moment is kind of important, even like quite literally, in the ability to say what you just said, what you just did is not necessarily truthful or representative of the truth. It doesn't necessarily mean being dishonest. It just might mean you know what, even with your big brain, you don't have a heart. It's very Wizard
Exactly.
of it's very Wizard of Ozish. Is it? You know what I mean? It's a tongue
Yeah,
twister.
like tongue twister. The way I would put that, like, yeah, front and center is like these kinds of tools, like, yeah, that CMO may lose their job and ChatGPT does hallucinate like constantly. I feel like with that question about like people and these advanced systems like AI and data and all of these things that very few of us can actually grasp, including myself, like I barely understand them, is it all comes down and the value that we bring to the world isn't in our hands. It's in our head and our heart. Like humans are valuable for the stories they tell, for how they express themselves, for the opinions they may have. That CMO in the first place shouldn't have been valuable for their insights because there's data for that. But for their gut, that is something that takes years to develop and no AI system could replicate.
I mean, that's seriously, now you went, now you've got the air horn as well. You went from I found the tweet, by the way, from Alina that she referenced. So let me put that up top, and we can see if we can in real time make sense of it. Austin Roby said startups often have ownership set aside for future employees, but why not start with an ownership trust set aside for future users? And then makes a little comment here, starts with a commitment to community ownership, but leaves open the optionality of how and when. What do you think about that?
Let me observe that for a second. Because the whole ownership debacle, that one I feel it's going to take a lot more defining before we are ready for it. Because here's the thing, Web3 is built on top of ownership. Like that's the catchphrase. That's yeah, read, write, own. But at the same time, like something we've learned from these past years is yeah, people want the ownership, but they're not ready for the responsibility. So what I would ask in that kind of situation is yes, set it aside. Be ready to distribute ownership for the future users, but then what would that entail? What are you expecting from them? Because it goes both ways. Like you can't own something without having the upkeep. And
Yeah.
that upkeep may look like just the responsibility or the advocacy, or yeah, like users can't expect to own a part of the company and only claim the checks.
With great blockchain comes great responsibility. I've just updated the Spider-Man meets you want the truth, you can't handle the truth. But it's true. I mean, it really, funnily enough, comes back to Pandora's box. Even though we didn't start it that way, it is. But we have no choice. We have no choice to open it, or maybe it's open already, and there will be bumps and there will be bruises and there will be a lot more questions than there are answers, but no doubt this represents a better way forward. I would call it community capitalism. I believe it's the evolution of capitalism. I believe it will save capitalism, and it may actually save the brands in the process, if and only if they're prepared to actually meet us halfway and wade into the sandbox, the quicksand, whatever it is, and kind of, get their hands dirty.
Absolutely. And that is the crux of it. Like that is another concept I call the parasocial brand. That is when you have an army of 10,000 evangelists as the 10,000 PFPs, you can change the world. You can make whatever you want. It's all a matter of, like, you manage to tap into the 10,000 of them. Yeah, that's power enough to do whatever you want in the world. The trouble becomes, yeah, how do you involve them? It's not only about the promises, it's about the responsibilities as well.
This has been Alejandro Arango, a digital consultant, bon viveur, explorer, adventurer, sailor, plotting the course forward, errant knight, Jedi knight, all of the above. If he's and you remember as well, when you deliver an alpha talk, you become a member. So hopefully you're going to be inside our Discord, hanging around. You can actually join our Discord for free, discord.gg/Alpha Collective. But if you want to buy a membership pass, you can do that at alphacollective.xyz or mint.alphacollective.xyz. I have to tell you, I have never been as excited and optimistic about the future than right now after listening to you, because with all the scary things ahead, we know that you never get to where you need to get to without kind of a few bumps and bruises and scrapes, and it's like getting in the gym. You're going to tear your muscles, but you're going to build them back even stronger than ever before. So if you want to follow Alejandro k41r0n on the X at k41r0n, it's 0, not O, right? Just to make sure that you are following the right person. Please check out his amazing writing on Mirror. That's how I met you when you were interviewed talking about Mirror, k41r0n.mirror.xyz, and connect with him on LinkedIn via that very long name. You can say it yourself. Where's the
Alejandro
Geraldo?
Arango Giraldo.
Say it
Yeah,
again. It sounds so good.
when you say it in Spanish, yeah, Alejandro Arango Giraldo.
Fantastic. If you want to register for next week's Alpha Beta Talk, Greg Vadino, who was with me in Second Life 17 years ago, so much so that we've called, it's going to be a fireside chat, and it's called Welcome to Clown Town. I love that. By the way, Jensa says thank you, and do join us in Jaffe's Discord. Absolutely. Why wouldn't you do that? Alejandro, thank you I am immediately following this. I am going back to rewatch the whole damn thing again because that's how good it was.
It was a great conversation, and thank you for having me, Joseph.
You are so welcome, and we'll be back next week.